Good morning. Uh, Unfortunately, I'm going to have to talk to you. You're going to have to act like you like what I'm saying, and I'll try to be entertaining. I don't necessarily understand why I think the way I think. My whole life, I never fit in. The teacher would say, "Go wash." This is true. Go wash up for lunch, and she found me over there with soap in my hair. Actually, at the lavatory, her name was Jetty Crow. And she tried so many times to entertain me through discipline, through projects. But what I didn't know is Sputnik had been launched by the Russians, and my world changed. Everybody's world changed. They wanted scientists, they wanted mathematicians, they weren't interested in artists. So I kind of got put on the back burner, which is fine. But I was able to take a pretty bad mental disorder and turn it into a decent living. And it's turned out okay. And so I'm going to show you some things today. We can talk about them. We'll have a question session at the end where we can discuss the materials, where in the heck these ideas came from. Have the first slide, Tristan. We all know about the Hubble telescope. I'm going to try to stretch your imagination because that's what we're here to talk about today, how to look inside yourself and find a voice. Not too long ago, the astronomers using Hubble had looked at every bit of the night sky and thought they had discovered everything that there was to see. And then a couple of bright astronomers turned it into a space and up into a spot in space where they knew nothing was there. And they left the lens open for 10 days. This is what they saw after 10 days. This is like looking through an 8-foot soda straw out into space. And that's one tiny little speck of space. They counted over 20,000 galaxies in that one space. That's hard for my brain to even wrap around. It's completely outrageous. When you think about last night, I went out in the night sky and I looked up into the Andromeda galaxy, and there's a faint light there that comes from our neighboring galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy. It's the closest one to our Milky Way. The light that I looked at last night left Andromeda 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs were on the Earth. That's how close our closest universe is. Now, how do you process that? That stretches even the best of us beyond. And I think what it does to me, I like looking at this picture because it makes me feel very small and know that there's a God out there that has way more creativity going on than I could ever imagine. And he's still busy. He's still doing stuff. Will we ever understand it all? No. Next slide. Okay. Who's a right brain person? Okay. Well, I guess that's left brain, the rest of you. I feel sorry for you all because I understand that. We need both sides of the brain. This is the structure that I need. This is the, okay, you got to have it here. You got to use this. But then this is my la-la land happiness, and I love living there. Every now and then there's a bridge that causes conflict. Leave me alone. I'm not done processing. I got to figure it out. Well, you have a timetable. You got to get it. I work the daytime at Gainesville Health and Fitness, and they keep me jumping. But they know they have to leave me alone to process, or nothing gets done. Now, do you right brain people wish you were more left brain? Yeah, I think we all do. Do you know anybody that's even? Yes. Yeah, and they're fun people to watch think. And then there's Steve Jobs. Boom, boom. Both sides of his brain were on fire. And we get the products that we got. So that's kind of cool. So can you become a right brain person? Yeah, you can be taught how to boil a potato, but can you make it into a potato souffle? Can you add the fun things? So everybody has a bit of the right and left brain. I think you have to ask my wife that I'm more here. And I enjoy it, and I've learned to work there and be very productive. The next one. I was at an art show several years ago, and a woman came up to me and she says, do you like butterflies? I go, well, yeah. And she says, well, I love butterflies, and I'm also the director of the children's pediatric dentistry school at UF. And she says, I want you to decorate. And I knew nothing about how to make a three-dimensional butterfly. So I found the material at an old science store. And these are 1/2-inch sheets of PVC that were heated in the oven and bent to color to match the motif in the rooms. Go ahead, next one. And so they were all over the place, and they were fun to make, and they were colorful. You don't have to feed them. Yes. And again, seldom do I return to a project. Like I haven't made butterflies in about 15 years. It's been a long time because I kind of worked through it. Next slide. Then I went to Washington when I was on my senior trip, and I was wandering through the National Gallery when I saw this amazing piece of art. It's the largest mobile that has ever been built, designed and built by a gentleman who invented mobiles, Alexander Calder. And I just stopped and sat, and I just looked at that. These paddles, for example, this paddle here is as big as this section of the wall. It's enormous, and it slowly turns. You know, it's not all steroids, but it's enormous. And I fell in love with the curiosity of figuring out how to make balanced artwork. Who have seen this piece up in Washington? Anybody? Yeah, it's outstanding. Next slide. Then I went home. Alcohol was not involved. And I said, how can I make things move? And so I have fish swimming. This is an exhibit up in Charleston. I have fish swimming. I have birds flying. I have the 80 grunts hanging across the back of the 20-foot exhibit. When the fan hit it, the fish swam. It was so cool. And then some other pieces on the walls. But wildlife was my thing. When I was 17, we lived on the ocean in St. Augustine, and I took my sailboat out in front of our house. And there was a right whale and her baby with her calf. And I could just sail right up to her, and her massive back would sit out of the water, and then she would exhale. And you could feel the heat of the mist from her breath, salty, briny. And she didn't mind that I was there. And year after year, she and her calf would return. And it kind of inspired me to find out what is actually going on under the ocean. And so most of my work has been about the sea life. Again, a 1/4-inch PVC, all wired together, supported by copper tubes. It took maybe about a month to put those fish together. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Okay, here's another one of my curiosity. My father was in the submarine service. Every time there was a chance for my brother and I go on board a submarine, I was there. So from an early age, submarines, again, what's going on under the ocean fascinated me. So this is a Nautilus shell. It's about this big. And here's this pirate who's reading about the things that he's stolen, all of his treasure. And up here are the brains of all the famous captains: Henry Morgan, Blackbeard, Captain Crunch. And he's got a series of penguins. Oh, and there's what's his name from the Tom Hanks movie? And we always got skeletons. There's always convenience still where he gets his alcohol. Again, there's no reason for this to exist, but it's a fun piece. And again, it's all made with PVC. Next slide. And here's the hospital inside of a dolphin. Again, this is about a 7-foot piece. There's always surfboards. There's always paintings. There's a CAT scan back here where we're looking at his scans, little engine. And here he's getting a prosthetic tail. You know, he kind of lost his, and there's some other tails. Here's some that are waiting to be put in. You know, so these little guys sail around the world helping out animals. A lot of my pieces have an environmental nudge to them. This is in a veterinarian's office up in Fernandina. And here we are in a conference room that I have nothing to do with. Thank you, sir. Next slide. And everybody needs a battle turtle. Again, all of these are look like gas tanks, are actually beer bottles. Not mine. No. Rockets, submarines. Again, he's reading about the war that he's about to go to. Again, surfboards, ping pong balls for lights. Again, all PVC. Yeah, and I heat it with a fancy blow dryer. And when I get it to where it's the right shape, I squirt it with water, kind of lock it into place. Again, every Navy needs one. Next slide. So this was a fun piece. There's a friend of mine who's invested a lot into my career. She came to me one day and she says, I collect odd art, but I want you to make me some. I said, I don't know what that means, but I'll figure it out. And she said, I was a horse veterinarian, a retired horse veterinarian. So she loves horses. She said, so can you do something about horses and a beluga whale? And so alcohol was involved. I sat down to understand what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. And so I know what a beluga whale looks like. Again, all PVC and penguins. And then the little people that I have, I call them Pisceans because they came from the galaxy, the constellation of Pisces. And so you'll see a few of them, the pirate with his little pointed ears. You'll see them scattered, but the penguins kind of do their bidding. They're kind of like their workmen. And so now, again, I'm at an art show and my daughter is sitting and this little girl says, so what's going on here? And I really hadn't thought about it. So I had to come up with a story. I says, well, these little people found the original DNA of all of the great racehorses down through history. And they've reanimated these horses to run one final race on the island of Sequestria. And the little girl says, yeah, I could see that. And so here we have Whirlaway, 1941, Citation, 55, Secretariat, Seattle Slew affirmed, Mr. Ed. And he's got a little TV that you can't see with one of his title slides on it. Again, they're feeding, they're picking up their droppings, more surfboards. Here they're wagering. And this looks like a bar, but I don't know what those look like. And here they had a game room. And in this room, when I brought the piece to her, she says, tell me about this room. I says, well, Secretariat was the greatest racehorse of all time. And she's listening to me. because she knows I research these pieces before I make them. And so I gave a whole room to Secretariat. His trophies are back there. This is where he won by 30 lengths. And again, he broke records everywhere he ran. A lot of the records still standing. He was put down because of a hoof disease. His hoof was disintegrating. And even though he still had a lot of wins and running in him, they had to put him down because it was so painful. And so she's listening to me. She says, well, what else do you know about Secretariat? And I said, well, I saw him run on television. I never saw him in person. But when a Triple Crown winner dies, they take the legs, the heart, and the head and return those to the owner for burial. And they incinerate the rest of the body. And they've done this ever since there have been Triple Crown winners. And I said, but except Secretariat, when the veterinarian team opened him up, they found that the heart, which is usually about 8 pounds, was 22 pounds. And she stopped me. She said, 23 pounds. I was there. And again, it just threw me that there was a piece of history here. And then she gets on the phone and she calls. You can't read these, but these are the riders that rode these horses and how much they're gambling on it. So she calls the jockey that rode Secretariat, and she sent him a picture of his board. So we got this piece done, and then as she was leaving, she goes, I wonder what snakes look like inside of a right whale. And so she wanders off, and my wife goes, did she just place another order? I go, I guess. She says, what do you know about snakes? I says, I don't like them. And so we make the snake submarine. We take it out to her place, and she opens the door. She says, do snakes bother you? I go, well, yeah, no, I don't know. She says, well, I have a few out here. Something thinking 2 or 3, 78 Burmese pythons that she raised as pets. And she had these beautiful terrariums where each of the animals lived, and they all looked at me like I was their dinner, which is uncomfortable. And so the snake had a gym in it where the snakes could work out, and get strong. It had a nursery where the baby snakes, and there's a lady there holding a baby snake in a towel. And anyway, it was all just fun stuff. And then a few years later, she calls me up and she says, what are you working on? I says, I'm doing some kinetic pieces. Make me a snake. I said, okay. She said, I want a 25-foot Burmese python. And in its middle, it's like this big around, and it stretches from here to there. And it moved like a snake. And when she saw it, she cried. She thought that was just beautiful. One thing leads to the next. I'm telling these stories about what's going on inside my submarines, and my daughter who's listening, Daddy, you ought to write these stories down. These are fun. I said, but they're all nonsense. She says, I know. So I turned these into kids' books. There's a couple in it that you'll follow through the different series. And again, some of my submarines and some other stories that I've done. Then cancer hit my family. My wife got breast cancer. My wife of 40 years got breast cancer. She's here today. She's put up with me long enough to know that everything's going to be okay. I lost interest in this. I lost interest in art. I lost interest. My happy was gone because my new job was caretaker of my wife. Take care of her, breathe for her. And as you know, there's not a lot you can do. You just try to make them as comfortable as possible. And you do what you can. And so we worked through those days. And what I did is I took these kids' books and I turned them into an adult science fiction story. Treachery, villainy, debauchery, that's just the first paragraph. and it's ended up being a 700-page tome that I got it done. She was through with her treatments, and it's being edited right now. Who knows what'll happen with it? But it did what it was supposed to do. But again, if you follow the creation of different things, one leads to the next, or another one leads to the next, and it's a lot of fun discovering what's out there. And thankfully, I have a wonderful wife who enjoys and lets me travel around my brain. Sometimes it's a fun place. Next one. I think the best thing that I've ever made are my two kids with my wonderful wife here. I was at an art show in Charleston, and a fella came up to me, owns a boat company. He says, "We're building this big boat shop. We want a big fish to hang from the ceiling. How big can you make?" I don't know how big you want it. Well, I got room for a 25-foot fish, and we want a marlin to hang from our ceiling. Well, how much will it be? I told him the fee, and well, do it. Go ahead and make it. And so I'm thinking I'm building this thing in my mind, but then the other issue is how to get it to where it needs to go. It doesn't swim up to Charleston. So I took an old boat trailer, I made the fish, put it together, and we took it on the road trip up to Charleston. Next picture. And so there we are, going down the highway. What a scene that was. Every time we'd stop for gas, there was a buzz of people with their and that took 19 hours to build that. So that was it's an all wooden fish. I was thinking that's probably the biggest thing that I'll ever make, but who knows? 25-foot snake. I don't know. The fish is kind of cool. Next slide. Opus Magnus Opus. I was 10 years old. I was hunting in the woods at Micanopy. I was hunting squirrels, and I flushed a covey of quail. Scared the jeebies out of me. The gun went off. I went this way. The quail went that way, and that moment in history again caught my mind, and I said, I need to do something about this, because the quail populations in the South are being devastated. Lack of habitat. The red ant population is killing most of the eggs. So there's a lot that the quail has to overcome. And so I said, I'm going to make me a piece. This ends up being about this tall, and it's a work of love. You can see the birds are hollow to make them light. Where the feather tips come together, they're made out of steel and they're welded, but they'll be textured to look like feathers. When it's all done, it'll just look like a bunch of birds that are getting away from me. I don't blame them. But yeah, this is a fun piece. I had to learn how to weld. Yeah. But injuries come along with my hobby. This hand has done more things to this hand than you could ever imagine. Like making these birds, when I was hollowing them out, one of the bits got away from me and dug into my hand. I've hot glued my hand to my mustache. I damaged it once again, and I put super glue on it to stop the hemorrhaging. And when I woke up the next morning, and she had to get scissors and cut. Another time I was working on a pair of matched marlins, mirrored pair, jumping like 6 foot tall. And I'm working on the beak. I'm working real fast. I'm working against the clock, when the drill bit goes through the beak and through my index finger, and it clips my radial nerve. And I have no feeling in this part of my finger. I can feel this. So I finished the birds. I got the fish. I got them together, went to the art show. So they're up there for sale. This guy sitting there looked at it. He goes, "This is $2,000 and this is $1,000, but they're the same. Well, what's the difference?" I said, "Well, that's got my finger in it." He goes, "What?" I told the story, and he goes, "I'll take the $2,000 fish." That's a great story. That's a great story. But yeah, the injuries are part of it. I guess there's no carving of wood without the shedding of blood. I read that somewhere. Next. And here's a snake. You kind of get an idea of how it's rigged and how, again, where do you build a snake? But it weighed about 8 pounds when it was done. Okay, next, please. Yes. So you can kind of get a feeling of how it moves. And it just takes a whiff of a wind to make it move, like the sandhills that you saw in the sanctuary. When they're in my front yard, they're going to town. The wings flap because the wind hits them. Okay, next. And this is the alligator. And I think it's there's a movie. If you click it one more time, I think it plays. There we go. That's my beautiful wife. Again, every yard needs an alligator. Its big brother is hanging in Ballyhoo's now. If you guys go there and get something to eat, he's in the outdoor thatched roof part. It looks, it's really big up there. Next. Oh. Michelangelo kept telling the Pope, "I'm not a painter, I'm a sculptor. I'm not a writer, but I can write. I'm not a painter, but I can paint. I don't really know what I am, but this is a piece that's on the wall in my house. It's made with a palette knife. It's like painting with a butter knife. And it's about as big as your TV there." And I did a series of these a while back, and painting is relaxing for me. Go ahead. It's another one of my pieces. Top predator in the ocean now. I don't know whether y'all know that. The shark is not. The shark hides from these guys now. They've learned how to hunt in packs. Again, the top predator. Next. I don't know where I saw that. But what's next for me? I love studying the human condition and trying to understand why people do what they do. And I've got a bunch of notes that I call the secret life of X. Like you look down a rabbit hole, you ever wonder what was really down there? Well, I've figured it out. Or an anthill, what's really down in an anthill? Well, I have a suspicion now of what's going on down there. And what goes on in the mailbox at night that none of us are aware of. And the baptismal pool. When I was a kid, I was told that they baptize you and all of your bad stuff goes down the drain. And I remember looking and wondering where it went. Well, I have an answer for where it went. And so sometime over the next year, you'll start to see these new pieces as they roll out, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more about how my brain works. And I'm still trying to figure that out. I think that's it. I think that's the last line. Yeah. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. I don't have a gallery. When I was doing shows, it was easy to say, "Hey, I'll be at this show. You can come and you can see the things that I make." A lot of my pieces are scattered all over the place. Right now, the next door, you can see what's in the sanctuary. My house, and next year, there'll be a permanent place where you can come and you can look at these things and we can talk about them and you can understand them. And there again, they're a commentary on humans. So I don't have a gallery, but you're all welcome to come by my home. I think some of y'all did. I'm at my house and these random people start showing up, and after about the third, what's going on here? And I says, "Oh, Andy said to go by and look at your things." And I go, "All right, thanks, Andy." And so all throughout the day, people came by and I kind of liked it. So you guys want to have prayer or something? They said, "No, you know." But next.
Beautiful, although you showed the Washington, and how you said in terms, is that because of solar heating coming and heating it so that it's strong?
No, they have blowers, deliberate blowers in place to move the air. You know, is it Keats, the English poet, that said, "How can you separate the dancer from the dance?" You can't. We've all seen someone do Swan Lake, but there's the dancer and then there's Swan Lake. There's the mobile and then there's the wind. And you can't have one without the other. So I don't know if you ever can separate, but the wind makes my things move. Next. Yes, ma'am. It's inside. Yeah. She has a chair, a recliner, and she sleeps in there with them. Feeds them, and they all know her like yeah, we know the back of our hand. But a wonderful, wonderful person. But yeah, it's an indoor piece. Most of these need to be indoors because just a little bit of wind and they're off to the races. Any more? Yes, sir.
What material was the big fish? Was that metal or was that?
It was wood. It's all wood. Hollow metal, hollow wood frame, a thin wood veneer, carved, and it's painted with acrylic. And I don't know what the fish weighed, but it was pretty heavy. Anything else? All right. Well, hey, if any of you want to get in touch with me, call Andy. Call him after 11 at night. Make his life really interesting. And I want to introduce my wife. Please stand up. My wife, Brett. Without her, none of this could be possible. But thank you. Yes, enjoy those.